Ever felt frustrated being told PMS, heavy bleeding, and cramping are just normal parts of life? You are not alone. I loathed my monthly cycle for decades. That all changed when I earned 3 health coaching certifications discovering something incredible. Your period is vital. It is an outward sign of your inner health, and it holds the key to unlocking your full potential. I've been there battling heavy, painful periods, and I turn them into cycles with minimal PMS and cramping. Today, I'm on a mission to share that information with you. Pour a cup of your favorite drink, get comfy, and grab your headphones as we embark on a candid and empowering journey of self-discovery. Together, we'll demystify menstrual cycles, explore cyclical living, delve into natural birth control, and guide parents through those crucial period talks with tweens and teens. It's time to break the taboo around menstruation and embrace the wisdom it holds. I'm your host, Heather Almendinger, and this is the Embracing Flow podcast. Hello and welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on Embracing Flow. I'd like to introduce our guest today, an expert at Embracing Flow, Dr. Nathalie Beauchamp. Thank you so much for visiting us today. How are you?
I'm great. Excited to have a conversation with you today.
I am so happy that you're here. Listeners, here's why I invited Dr. Nathalie Beauchamp with us today. She is a chiropractor and biohacking expert with over 27 years experience. She is the author of several books on health and wellness, including her latest Smart Cuts Biohack Your Health Span, cutting edge protocols for greater energy and performance. Through her signature coaching programs and corporate wellness initiatives, Dr. Beauchamp helps empower professional women to achieve peak health, energy, and productivity, which is what we all want. I am so happy that you're here today. Before we dive into how you got to here and the information you're going to share, would you be open to sharing one of your first cycle stories and about what age did you start cycling?
Oh, I had to think back about that. So I'm going to guess I was 10 years old because I remember it was quite early. So it'll have to be 46 years ago. And I remember, actually, isn't it funny how we do remember those moments as women? I had pigtail. I remember wearing pigtail, tell you how young I was, right? And thinking, okay, all right, here it is. My mom had told me about it, but here it is. Now it's time to go. And I kind of remember, I won't say the struggle, but the challenges of getting the pads figured out and if you're going to go through your underwear bleeding and so forth. So I remember managing this quite on my own, even though my mom was a pretty present parent. It's just that it's something that we have to figure out. So yeah, so at the age of 10, you're mature, but not extremely mature. So it does help you mature pretty quickly that you now have something else to figure out in your life that you need to plan and take care of yourself. And I have to say, thankfully, my cycles throughout the years, I have so many friends that have painful cycles and so forth that I was blessed with not too much headaches from that point of view, and very thankful for that.
Yes, sounds like you have been very fortunate with your cycles. I was the same age. It was same thing. I remember sort of what I was wearing somewhere between when I was turning 10 and 11. So yes, it's weird how it's ingrained. It's such a memorable moment and transition in our lives. Has that experience been part of what you're doing now? Have you
To
noticed looking back, has it unknowingly filtered into what you're doing now?
You know what, you say that, and a big yes, and yes for two things is that probably because I felt alone as a woman and, not able to talk about it and so forth. Me being a health practitioner, I'm in a position now that not that I specialize in hormones or endocrine health or anything like that, but it's just that I think it gave me that fresh perspective with insight. That's the conversation to have around it, not just with period, but with health overall. And then secondly, another reason is I was anorexic when I was, 13 and 14, and actually all through my late teens. And that I know really made me go into health because I had to figure out a way to get myself out of the situation. And back then there was no Google and internet. It was like the library and there was no books and stuff like that. So I think my passion for, I always loved reading, but my passion about health and studying and figuring out things have been since I can remember. And now, being into more biohacking and so forth, like I'm constantly learning, I'm constantly reading, I'm constantly, testing things. So I'm an eternal learner. That's for sure. So I think, yes, the answer is yes, a big resounding yes on that question.
And it's interesting how it unknowingly does sometimes play a part in what we do as adults. Now, you mentioned biohacking, and I know that I understand a little bit of what it is. It's kind of more of a newer age word. Would you
Yeah,
explain kind of what biohacking is and how it impacts us as professional women?
yeah. Yeah. So biohacking, I mean, can sound like a scary word, and it's David Asprey who has probably coined the definition, and I'm not going to read the whole definition, but it's using your physiology and modulating your physiology to improve performance. So your own biology and your environment. So that's kind of the more technical definition. To me, biohacking, because I'm still in practice, I'm going to the office this afternoon. So to me, biohacking is all about the best tools. And when I say tools, I'm not just talking about, technology or gadget, but the best strategies to get the best results for your health. So to me, biohacking is me having my cup of morning decaf coffee in my backyard, barefoot, looking at the sun and just taking in the sunlight to get my circadian cycle ready, which I'll talk about in biohacking tip number one. So to me, biohacking is leveraging my body, my knowledge, and what's around me to be the most efficient. Like we all would like to have an hour and a half to go to the gym and exercise, but it may not be the reality for most. So you have 20 minutes. Okay, let's go. What can you do? Right. So I'm all about stacking things and be the most efficient with our time, because a lot of my patients are busy mom and working and just trying to fit it in and just doing the kids activity, and then there's no time for them. So I'm all about finding ways for people to integrate healthy stuff into their lives.
Yeah. And I know the answer to this, but just for those that are busy, it's not going to really raise that cortisol and make it so that way. It's another to-do list, another thing to
Yeah,
add to the to-do list that makes things worse. This is something that can actually improve
yeah,
the health, reduce the cortisol, make life a little bit easier, and get you into a better place. Is that correct?
yeah.
All right.
Totally, and you're ahead of me with this point with cortisol, so that it is point number three. So yes, because we're on a go go go, and I will talk about being a chiropractor. I've been working, closely with the nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, and that fight or flight. And I think it has gotten a lot more awareness, but I'd love to dig a little bit deeper into that.
Well, let's dig in. We talked
Okay.
about these different steps and you've mentioned them. So what is step one? Explain what you're going to be giving to us.
Yeah, so I like to look almost like a full day. What should I won't say a perfect day. God, God knows there's no such thing as a perfect day, but what are the steps that you should aim for during the day? And one of my book actually is called Hack Your Health Habits. So it's all about obviously hacking, but habits, because that is key. We've all went on, okay, I'm going to do this and this, and then you're not changing the habits in your life, and therefore after a week, oh geez, I forgot to do this, this thing that I said I was going to do. So I'm big on to integrating habits into our daily life, and, and integrating them slowly, because if we change too many things, guess what? I mean, sometimes it will stick if there's a bit of a crisis and somebody's has a heart attack or a diagnosis of a pretty bad chronic disease. sometime this will speed things up that people will follow through. But if there's no like major rush, I always say start implementing small things and then make it stick and then add another one. So the first one I just mentioned earlier, just going outside, and I don't know where, right now it's raining. I'm in Ottawa, Canada. So guess what I did? I couldn't go outside because it was raining. Came up here in this room and I threw in my lights. Now it may sound bad because they're artificial light, not ideal. Much rather would have the sun, but that was not my reality this morning. But on a sunny day, I'll grab my cup of decaf coffee, and I'll explain in a second why my first cup is a decaf. And I get myself out there barefoot in the grass on the ground just to be able to touch the earth and get those negative ion into my body. Even though we say negative ion, it's not negative, it's just that those ions will quench our free radical. So grounding, light, and getting ourselves ready for the day. So that light is truly important. And as we go through the day, that light is very important. So in the day, you want that bright light. But if you're working at the computer, this is maybe when you start wearing those blue light blocking glasses, but more in the afternoon, because in the morning, you do want that light, even though it's artificial. And then throughout the day, we kind of follow the sun. So I myself have orange glasses and red glasses. So orange is more for the evening, and then red is truly at night. And my husband, drives him crazy, but he's not allowed to turn on any big lights in the evening because and it sounds funny, like just opening up the fridge, that bright light, or like this small amount of light can really, especially for people that have sleep issue, disturb you. So to me, playing with the light, and it is different, if it's dark outside at 4 o'clock, depending where you live, you do need to adapt. And with that is adding the technology part. So making sure you're not reading with your iPad at night, bright light in your eyes, even though now the smartphones or pads or tablets will have timers that you can put on. Still, it's not the best having something that will stimulate you, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the sleep. So to me, it's leveraging the sun, trying to follow the sun as much as possible, because as you mentioned with the cortisol is what will get us up in the morning, and then the melatonin is what will help us sleep. So making sure that we regulate those hormones is truly key.
So, and I love that. I try and get out within 2 hours of the sun rising, exposing my abdomen. I heard that helps get that mitochondria awake and doing some fun stuff.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, hearing about that step. And
yeah, and even sometime if I'm again short on time, I'll talk about exercise later. I'll bring my kettlebells outside and I'll do a quick 20-minute, 25-minute HIIT training. I'm outside. So I'm getting the sun, I'm exercising, I'm sweating. So that's what I mean about biohacking, is hitting those things as much as we can. So the second one that I think is really important is decreasing our toxic load. I was just doing a webinar a couple of weeks ago with my followers, and this is something that we forget. So detoxifying, there's many organs that will detoxify. We all know about the liver, but we need to think about sweating as well. So a lot of people will say, well, a lot of women, I should say, oh, I don't like sweating, Nathalie. I'm like, ooh, okay, well, get over that, because if you're not sweating, you're not detoxifying. So that's the huge thing. And I know a lot of people are familiar with detox because it's quite popular on social media, but I'm talking more about your toxic load. And I have this great picture when I do a presentation, is imagine 2 buckets. And you have a bucket that's already pretty full because, I don't know, the person grew up near chemicals, or the person, God knows what. And then the other person, her bucket is less filled. Well, if she's all of a sudden exposed to a moldy environment, the one that has less in her bucket is not going to be affected as much, and hopefully her detox process and pathways will work better. So it's not just about detoxing, but it's about decreasing our toxic load. So that means, cleaning products, our, beauty products, our cooking, pots and pans, our air, our water. So, and again, this doesn't change overnight. This is something that you it's like peeling an onion and say, okay, let's look at all those things. And we know that we're exposed to so much more now, from fire retardant material for our furniture and stains and paints and all of that stuff. So I always say to people, yes, we need to detox, we need to sweat, we need to make sure that our pathways are working properly, but we need to intentionally decrease our toxic load. So if you know that you look at your deodorant and you're like, oh, dang, it's not that good. Next time that you go to purchase and renew, well, opt for something that has or less chemical or none if you can. And then that habit now is just to remind yourself to buy that one. You already was putting on deodorant, so that one shouldn't be too hard. It's when we need to do a full blown new behavior that's hard. But changing our cleaning products, changing our beauty products, that can be done, say 3 to 6 months, because you're purchasing on a regular basis. And then as women, we're exposed to what are called xenoestrogens. So again, chemicals from our environment that will mimic our own estrogen, and then the receptors, and then you develop hormonal issues. And again, it is not good, and you can address it, different ways, but you need to, again, decrease that toxic load so it doesn't interfere. I'm a big fan of saunas to sweat. I'm a big fan of a routine for lymphatic drainage. We talk about that in our book, Smart Cuts, to make sure that we keep the lymphatic system going for detoxification. And then from a nutrition point of view, sulforaphane, which is present in cruciferous like broccoli and Brussels sprout and so forth. So adding that to your diet, I think, is really important. And also supplementing. I know that I myself do. I have some of my detox pathways genes that are not as efficient as they should be. So I really like to support that. But again, going back to, it's one thing to go on those detox diet, but are you decreasing your toxic load to start with? So hopefully that makes sense for you.
Absolutely. And I've been doing that. I use essential oils versus going and getting, like, I like lotion, but I didn't like the stuff in the lotion. So I have essential oils, and I went and I did research to find out a lotion that doesn't have a lot of toxicity to it. And so then I put essential oils in that. I've done that with my shampoo. I've done that with my soap. So I started doing that to reduce, and I look for skincare that doesn't, that's has lower toxicity and is on the cleaner side.
Yeah.
And it really isn't hard. I can get it at I can get it at Walmart. I can get it at Target.
It's come a long way. It used to
Yes.
be almost impossible to find. Now, like, we have way, way more options, which is good.
Yep.
And then my third point, and you hinted to it with cortisol, so adrenals. So the adrenals are two glands that are sitting at the top of our kidney, and they produce epinephrine and norepinephrine or adrenaline. So we all know, something, you almost got in a car accident, boom, your adrenaline's going to go. Well, that's produced by your adrenal glands, but it does produce another hormone that's more for chronic stressors. So cortisol, it needs to peak in the morning and go down towards the end of the day. And I'm also, for people that have issues with this, I'm a big fan of testing with saliva your 4-point cortisol. So you can see if you're peaking in the right places throughout the day, because some people are way too high or way too low. And then, like, there's different stages of adrenal. I hate to say dysfunction, because the body's smart. It's not dysfunctional. It's just that we're taxing our adrenals sometime a bit too much. And what happens, especially for us women, I always say to my patient, if your adrenals are, tired, and I don't even like to use that term because it's a bit too simplistic, but if you're adrenals are working overtime and you hit menopause or pre-menopause, what we don't realize is our estrogen and progesterone now needs to be produced in part by the adrenals. So they're not working optimally to start with, and then you hit that. So you really want to make sure that you're nurturing your adrenals before you start premenopause and menopause. So that's a huge, huge one. So obviously controlling stress and all of that stuff. I've been myself a big fan of breath work to try to regulate my autonomic nervous system. As a chiropractor, I've been getting adjusted since I'm 14 years old. So to me, chiropractic care is not just about back pain or neck pain, it's about balancing my nervous system. And a chiropractic adjustment will do that. Making sure, again, that sleep is key. And then, like I said, just paying attention to your stress level throughout the day. And where I was going with this too is adrenal support. So I'm a big fan of herbs or adaptogen like ashwagandha, rhodiola. And what I like about adaptogen is that they're going to do that. So if you're, low, it's going to help stimulate. If you're high, it's going to help buffer it a little bit. So I really like those adaptogen. And sometimes though, some people are drained, for lack of a better term, that adrenal complexes with the extract, the bovine extract is needed for support. But again, you can't just supplement your way out of there if you're burning the candles at the candle at both end with your behavior. But I find this is something that is overlooked often. Like people will go to the doctor and say, oh, I'll try to diminish your stress. You're like, okay, what does that look like? So I find that unfortunately there's not a lot of tools. So to me, chiropractic care, breath work, looking at your schedule and what you can take away from the to-do list, as you were mentioning at the beginning, because we keep adding to it. Actually, that was my blog this week because it was Women's Health Month in May. So you want to make sure you're not adding to your list to make sure that you're not overworking yourself and dysregulating your adrenal hormones.
Right. Not another
Perfect.
thing to do. Yeah, it's how do we reduce that cortisol? How do we
Yeah,
get it? Thank you for pointing out about as we get into that perimenopause, menopause,
yeah,
our ovaries aren't making the estrogen and progesterone. It goes to our adrenals. And if
yeah,
they're already overworked,
yeah.
there's going to be more issues, and that's going to make that transition into wise women a little bit harder, if
Yeah,
not a lot
and you're
harder.
just making me think to kind of have a visual here that if we look, not that I'm saying that anyone should necessarily, but if you look at the breakdown of how hormones are produced, it starts with cholesterol, and then you've got different branches of your estrogen and progesterone, and one of them produces the cortisol, and there's even something called cortisol steal, that it will steal some building blocks that should be used for even testosterone, because as women we do have a certain level of testosterone that we need to achieve. So you definitely don't want to be stealing from all the other ones that you need.
Yep,
And I'm
agree.
gonna move on to number 4 here. And I hinted to this with the nervous system. And again, being a chiropractor, obviously quite knowledgeable with the nervous system. And there's a nerve, actually, we have 2 of them because we have one on each side, called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is cranial nerve 10, and it comes out right here to the front and goes literally to our gut and the organs in the abdomen. So, when we say, oh, I had a gut feeling, well, that's probably coming from the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is actually one of the longest nerve, is the longest nerve in the body. And it has an effect that is parasympathetic. So sympathetic is fight or flight. I have, a bear running after me. Let's get out of there. I don't need to digest. I don't need to, relax. I need to get the hell out of there, right? But the parasympathetic is that rest and digest, exactly as I mentioned, that we want to digest our food and so forth. So that balance between the two is key. And it's not that we need to be always in sympa or para. It's depending what we do. If you just finish eating a meal, well, you should be more in parasympathetic. But unfortunately nowadays, most of the time we're in that dominant sympathetic mode, unfortunately. And I'm a big fan. And do I see an Oura ring on your finger? Yes.
Yes, you
So
do.
we're obviously both big fans of tracking. So to me, heart rate variability is so important to track. And I know I don't have Apple Watch or whatever modalities or technologies people have, but most of them now do track heart rate variability. And why we care? Because heart rate variability is a great marker to know how our sympathetic and parasympathetic and vagus nerve. So it's one of the tests to test how resilient you are and how, tired your entire nervous system is. And I know with Oura, when we wake up in the morning, it'll give us a sleep score and then a readiness score. And that readiness score is based on the heart rate variability. So if you ate too late before you went to bed, then your body was busy digesting and it should not have been. So your heart rate variability was probably not optimal. So it's such a great tool to have, especially for people that have issues with their sleep, because you can say, okay, what did I do different last night that gave me a good score or gave me, a not so good score? And then you can retrace your behavior. Was it, I was at, I don't know, an event and it was bright light like crazy until, like, of course your sleep will be disturbed. So I really like those tools to be able to track what we're doing. And as I mentioned, breath work to me is great way to calm down. And when a quick tip here is that in order to be more in that parasympathetic, you want to exhale more than you inhale. So to me, if I'm in a stressful situation, I'm like, okay, let's breathe through the nose, 4 count in and 6 count out. So what it does, it will play with your oxygen and your carbon dioxide and being able to I won't say, well, kind of reset your nervous system. And on the flip side, if I need to get revved up because I need to do something, then kind of hyper breathing is a technique. So I really feel that breath work can be a switch to activate or slow down your nervous system. And then there's the cold plunges. I'm a big fan of those. I hate them with a passion, but I know that they are valuable. But again, we go back to the adrenals, and if someone is fatigued and is not in a good place, it's not the time to jump in the pool at 50 degrees. No. So again, it's just information we see on Instagram and so forth. Fantastic. It might be good for that person at that time, but you have to ask yourself, what about you? Does it fit you? And that's one thing that I always talk about. It's not a one size fits all. So maybe you just start with a 10, 15 second of cold water once you finish your shower, and then see how you do. And the point of cold, you would think, wow, it's going to activate your sympathetic nervous system. You don't want that. You do to a certain extent to build that resilience, because after, your body will get in that parasympathetic mode to kind of balance it out and compensate. There's also now many vagus nerve activators that you can have. There's tools like the Sensate, Truvega, that you can literally put some electrical pressure on the vagus nerve to stimulate it. This is not where I would start. You could just start with the shower. Another big one is humming and singing and gargling. It doesn't cost anything. It activates one of the branch of the vagus nerve. So that's why, there's always tools to buy if you want, but there's a lot of stuff you can do, just biohacking, kind of our ancestral living kind of thing, that you don't have to necessarily rely on technology.
I love that, which is kind of explains why when I sing, I feel a lot better.
I've noticed that myself, if I'm, like just maybe running behind at the clinic or something like that and so forth, like I'll start humming. And it is calming myself down without kind of knowing that I was doing it. But I'm like, wow, isn't the body amazing? So the fifth point is sleep and recovery. And I think I talked about that already quite a bit with breath work and looking at your sleep like something that you don't have to do, but um, you will do in a way that is good for you. So having a bedtime routine, I'm a big fan of no electronics in the bedroom, and if you can, even turn off your Wi-Fi at night, because some people are more sensitive to Wi-Fi than they think. Red light therapy, I'm a big fan as well. And then even in our book, Smart Cuts, we have protocols for people that have a hard time falling asleep and protocols for people that have a hard time staying asleep, in again, tips and tricks and supplementation and so forth. Because at the end of the day, sleep is the most important thing. So even before a workout, even before eating, a superb diet, like it just, if you don't sleep, this is how the body recuperates. And for people that are old enough to remember computers defragging, I remember having to do that on my computer to kind of clean up the file. Well, that's what happens at night. So, and then leading to that is blood sugar regulation. And I think a lot of time women will think that they have hot flashes at night, and it's not necessarily that. It's because their blood sugar will dip. So let's say they don't eat the right things at night, because at your last meal, you really should have a good protein and a good fat to stabilize your blood sugar as much as you can, because if it does dip, your cortisol will need to be released to stabilize your blood sugar level, and you'll wake up. So this is something that is very important. And as much as I'm a big fan of intermittent fasting, again, there's a time and a place. So you got to look at your scenario. What is it that is going on? If it's your sleep, well, have a good protein and a good fat, even maybe like a boiled egg an hour before you go to bed, or a little bit of, I don't know, something that some almonds and a piece of cheese if you do dairy. So have something that will stabilize your blood sugar. And obviously also during the day, you need to manage your blood sugar as well. And that's why, going for a walk after you eat to stabilize that blood sugar. But for women to really pay attention to that, because I hear often women just, let's say early 40s say, geez, I'm waking up in the middle of the night. And when I have people really stabilize their blood sugar, those symptoms oftentimes will disappear. And that brings me to my last point, which is eating enough protein. As women, we tend to not eat enough protein, myself included. I don't count calories, but I do count my grams of protein. So we want to aim for at least zero 0.8 to 1 gram of lean body mass. So, not necessarily your full weight, but the weight that you would like to be at your leanest. And it's almost a full-time job, right? Because you need to focus on good sources of protein. So I myself do protein shake to try to supplement that. So this is something that, again, I see a lot of women not doing. And then lastly, focusing on strength training. As women, women tend to shy away from weight training and are more on the cardio equipment, because you're like, oh, I need to burn calories. I need to, so you do to a certain extent, but it's not as simple as calorie in and calorie out. And that would be an entire other conversation. But, making sure that we are keeping our muscle mass, especially as we're aging. And it's never too late to start strength training. I remember reading a study years ago on women over the age of 70 that started strength training, and they were able to increase their bone density and their muscle mass as well. So that's never too late to start. So if you're in your 50s, 60s, you've never lifted a weight in your life, it's never too late to start. And as women, you're not going to get all buffed up, like crazy, because it doesn't work like that for us. So sadly, like I said, women will tend to go to the cardio. And yet, if you increase your muscle mass, your metabolic rate will become so much more efficient that you will burn more calories. So very, very much encouraging women to do some strength training. The benefits are truly tremendous.
Yeah. And it just kind of reminds me that with cardio, for those that are trying to lose that weight, if they're just doing cardio, they may not be losing the weight because their body wants the strength training. It's causing more cortisol that then holds
Yes.
onto the fat versus the weight training that revs up that metabolism. You need more
Yeah.
energy to build that muscle. So
Yeah.
then you're gaining muscle, your body composition's
Yeah.
changing,
Yeah.
and you see differences
Yeah. And
without
I
the
have
big
a
cortisol
personal,
spike.
yeah, a personal experience to this because when I was in my 30s, I competed in natural bodybuilding. And then before I turned 40, I wanted to run a marathon. So totally different training, right? And guess what? I lost muscle mass and I just didn't feel great doing the marathon. So point being that, if you love running and, marathon is your thing, go for it. But again, it is hard on the body and it is hard on those adrenals, potentially if you're, overdoing it because you have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock in the morning to go for your runs and so forth. So just as women, let's be careful. And I'll finish on this from an exercise point of view is that anything is why does it always have to be extreme? So what I mean by this is our society, I find, is focusing on the person that climbed a mount, whatever, the person who's lost 100 pounds, the person, like, why aren't we just promoting being healthy and keeping our weight steady and keeping our muscle mass and keeping our heart health and our mobility and flexibility? I know the answer to that because it's doesn't grab any views or anything like that, right? Like it's not, and kudos to the people that lose 100 pounds, but I find our society is just focusing so much on the extreme at both end, and I think it needs to change. Like it needs to be okay. Wow, congratulations, you've kept your weight and your muscle mass and so forth. Like wow, why aren't we celebrating the woman who did that? As well as the other one that, might have had more fluctuation. So that's a bit of a pet peeve of mine that we're focusing on those extreme cases. And I think there's a lot of great people doing great things that are just in the middle, which the middle will be easier on the body anyway, to not fluctuate from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, I agree. You have given us so much information. Um, if I remember correctly, you have a gift for the
Yes. So
listeners
if
that they can
people,
get
yeah,
this information.
yeah, if people go on my website and I I have a shortened website because my last name's a bit hard to spell. So if people go to www.drnat.life, it will go to my website and then you'll get a pop-up of a biohacking ebook with 10 tips and a lot of stuff that I cover in the information we went over today, but there's obviously more. They can subscribe to my newsletter, check my blogs. I have written 6 books. They're all on Amazon as well for people to go and check out.
We appreciate that. Those links will be in the show notes. Where can people find more information about you?
Well, on my website, and I'm also quite active on Instagram. So my handle is my name at Dr. Nathalie Beauchamp. I do, videos of me working out in the basement and giving tips here and there. So I'm quite active on Instagram for people to follow me as well.
Love that. Before we go, you gave us so much so far. Any additional wise words of wisdom for us to take with us?
I would say don't make it hard. It does not have to be hard. I think we're bombarded by so much that we feel, oh, geez, I've got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this. No, you don't. Step back, go back to the basic, look at your routine, look at your life. What habits should you integrate? And just take one thing at a time. health should not be so overwhelming. And it's because of social media, or, like it's just, we're so bombarded at FOMO, fear of missing out, right? Like you're fearful of, if you're not doing this, you're missing the boat completely. So don't make it so hard. It doesn't have to be.
Yep. Yeah, it's keeping up with the Joneses, as we used to say before social
Yeah.
media, and
Yeah.
it just, yeah, the fear of missing out and keeping up with those Joneses because we want what the neighbors have.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Those were amazing words to end on. I appreciate you taking us on this enlightening journey into biohacking. This has been absolutely amazing. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are welcome. Again, all the links can be found in the show notes. Thank you, listeners, for spending your time with us today. If you found a nugget of wisdom or a moment of empowerment, our mission is accomplished. Do you know someone who could benefit from this information? Please share Embracing Flow with them. In every phase, embrace it, love it, crown it, and always be vividous. Talk to you soon. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the show, submit a rating and review, and share it with your friends. Visit my website, embracingflowpodcast.com, to receive your free guide on 4 ways to decrease PMS. The link is in the show notes. Information shared on the Embracing Flow podcast is for educational purposes only. It does not constitute medical advice. Until next time, love hard, laugh often, and always be vividous.